So this is Survival 101, aka How Not to Die, or How to Not Die. I don't know, however you want to say that, whatever. Please, at any point I explain something that doesn't make sense to you, or you're confused about anything, or anything that I say raises a question, interrupt me. I want you guys to interrupt me. It helps me know that you're actually hearing the words that I'm saying. It's kind of weird if I just talk this whole time. You can type questions in Fleet Chat if you don't have a mic or don't want to use it for some reason, but just keying up on comms and saying I have a question is totally fine and encouraged. Okay, so we're going to focus on avoiding dying unnecessarily. Loss is obviously a part of Eve, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't ever try to avoid loss. So let's get into it. First thing you can do to help yourself know what's going on around you and survive is to watch local. Streams linked in Fleet. Watching local is a great way to know who is actually in the system with you. It is a default automatic channel. There is no way to avoid local. If you're in the system, you are in local. It is perfect intel, if that makes sense. Is anyone not clear on what I mean by perfect intel? Okay, cool. So yeah, you join a system, you are automatically in local. If someone else joins the system with you, you can see them. There's no way they can avoid that, at least the way the game mechanics currently are. This is the fastest form of knowing who's in the system with you. You should have this channel, the local channel, open as much as possible while you're out in space. So actually on my stream, doing a bad example, right, I've got Fleet Chat open, but that's because I'm docked and, you know, watching for your guys' questions here. And Pancake, great question. That is the last point on this part here, which is that local does not work in wormhole space. You can talk in local and reveal yourself to be in a system, but wormhole space is the only part of space where when you jump in, you are not automatically added to a list of people in local. Any questions on local?
Podfin has no local too.
Thank you. I will add that to my list here. Podfin does not have local, just like wormhole space. Thank you. Nailed it. Okay, other questions on local or things that I missed? Neat. Next thing while we're still talking about chat channels is intel. Organized groups use an intel channel to keep track of where neutrals are in and around their areas of space. If you are not in the Figgle Intel channel, you should definitely join it. It is linked in the MOTD of the Flying Dangerous channel. Questions on chat channels for surviving and not dying? Okay, moving on to descan then. Let's do what someone mentioned earlier and insure our ships. Go ahead and insure your cruisers at Platinum. When we lose them at the end of this class, you will make some money because they're free. Yay! So insure your ships and undock. Go ahead and stop your ships on the undock. You can stop your ships by hitting Control Space. Can I get those of you who are a little more experienced and not paying attention to every single word I say, please keep an eye on local and make sure we don't get any war targets?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. If you guys are watching the stream right now, I'm actually rearranging my modules. This is completely unrelated to survival, but I'm going to point it out anyway. This is something you should get in the habit of doing, is arranging your modules in a way that you can easily access them with shortcuts. So this is the way that I like to do it. You can do it whatever way makes sense for you, but you should definitely do this anytime you undock. Yes, you absolutely can. I show them because I do a lot of recording and people like to see what modules I'm running passively. But yeah, you can hide them. I'll show it on stream by clicking this button down here and clicking on, where is it? Display.
Very top one.
Thank you. Passive modules. If you uncheck this, they go away. Cool. Okay, so we talked about chat channels. We're moving on to descan. D-scan is a really easy way to know what's around you in space. So if everyone hits their D-scan now, max range, max angle, hit your D-scan, and you can see that there's 2 Leshaks and an Orca somewhere out in space around us. Actually, no, there's 2 Orcas. This is the second best. Well, so you have local to know who's in system, and then you have your D-scan to know what ships are out and about around you. You can do a lot more with D-scan, but we're going to be very basic on D-scan today. There's a specific class for D-scan, which we will probably cover in a future class. Aside from using it to know what's sort of in space in general around you, you can use it to know what is at a specific location, or at least what's in line with a specific location. So everyone hopefully has the star on their overview. If you click on the star, or you move your camera around to it, if your camera doesn't swing like mine does, hit Shift-C to turn on your tracking camera. Then when you click on the star, your camera should swing over to the star. Drop the angle down to 5 degrees and scan, and you can see what's over at the star. You can see what's over at a station. Actually, in line with that station over there, there is an Orca somewhere. This is a great way to check gates in the system that you happen to be in without having to warp to them. Warping to a gate can be dangerous because there might be bubbles, there might be a gate camp. It's generally safer to scan the gate before warping to it if you don't already know what is there. So with that all said, let's get in. Actually, I'll talk about this in a second. Better overview.
I had a quick question.
Yes, go for it.
What filters are you using on your D-scan?
I'm mimicking my overview, so active overview filters.
Okay.
And that way, because on my overview I have things that I would care about that are interesting, like ships, bubbles, things like that. Those are the things I also want to see on my D-scan. If I want to see other stuff, I can just uncheck that and select all and have a look at all if I need to. Pancake. So first of all, there's a overview linked in the Flying Dangerous MOTD. It'll take you a bit to set up, but that's definitely worth doing. And then you're not seeing neutrals. There are no neutrals on grid with us, so you shouldn't see any neutrals on grid. There are neutrals in system, but you wouldn't be able to see them on your overview right now, so not relevant, I don't think. Okay, what I really wanted to do here was talk about how to know what's on a gate without actually going to the gate. So what we're going to do is we're going to get close to the Ibura gate without actually going to it. Let's take this warp. If you didn't get the warp, I'm warping us to Torino's planet 8. Okay, so I should have explained this before we warped, but before we warped, we were well out of D-scan range of the Ibura gate, right? We were nowhere close to that gate. It was like 40 AU away. There's no way to know what's there without getting closer. You don't have to warp to the gate to know what's there, though. As we talked about before in low-sec and null-sec, warping directly to a gate can be dangerous if you don't know what's there. What you want to do is see if you can find a celestial object, a planet, a moon, an asteroid belt, an anomaly, something near it that you can warp to, and then be within scan range of the gate. So if everyone clicks on the Ibura gate with your tracking camera on and your D-scan angle at 5 degrees, you should be able to scan and see what is on the gate. Like so. And so I can see from here there's a slasher and arbitrator, at least in that direction. I would be able to see if there was a bubble, a hick, an enemy gate camp, all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? Okay, pretty basic so far. Next, we're going to talk about how to scan a gate if there are no celestials. So if you look from where we are towards the EC dash gate, The only things over there are citadels. So let's actually pretend that it's just the gate all by itself and there are no citadels. How do you get close enough to that gate to scan it without having to warp to it and risk getting caught in a bubble or landing in the middle of a gate camp? Anyone know?
Have a bookmark?
Having a bookmark is a great way to do it, but you won't always have a bookmark. How else can you do it?
Isn't it like the warp cancel until you have a low cap, but so you don't reach the full destination?
Yep, you and Doc also said it in Fleet, you need to do a cap out, is what it's called. The way to do this is to turn on any modules that you can without having to lock up and shoot something, right? So on my particular cruiser, the only module I have that's not offensive is this micro warp drive, so I'm going to turn that on. And that micro warp drive is going to start taking my cap away. You can see it's already gone down like 10% here. It's going to go down another 10 or 12% on the next cycle. This can take a while though. So to speed this process up, what you want to do is initiate warp to something far away. In this case, the EC gate actually works. Initiate warp to the EC gate and then cancel it by hitting Control Space. So you start the warp and stop the warp. Start the warp and stop the warp. And you'll notice when you start warping, when you initiate a warp, that's when the capacitor is subtracted from your pool, not when you actually enter warp. So you can actually cap yourself out with this method. That's why it's called a cap out. We're going to go ahead and try this now. What you're looking for is for a notification to pop up which says not enough capacitor to warp all the way, warping as far as power permits. When that happens, then you let the warp complete.
Warp drive active. The capacitor is empty. Warp drive active.
You may have to repeat this several times. You might land still outside of D-scan range. You just repeat it until you get within 14.3 AU, and then you can know what's there without having to warp to it, or have a bookmark, or have a celestial nearby.
Warp drive active.
There's the notification if you're watching the stream. There's insufficient power. That's what you're looking for.
Warp drive active.
That one right there. So mine's getting me really close now. I'm at 19.6 AU, very close to the distance I want to be at. It's probably going to be one more warp until I get there.
Warp drive active. Warp drive active.
How close do you need to be for it to be effective?
Within 14.3 AU.
Okay, yeah, I got to 13.44.
There you go. And you can tell that you're in range because if you hit your D-scan, you'll be able to see the gate on D-scan along with anything else that happens to be on it. Now, in this case, we've kind of messed up the D-scan because there's going to be a bunch of people in line with this gate from where you're sitting. So, like, for mine, for example, I see Vexor, 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 Rupture, Arbitrator, Vexor, Moa, Arbitrator. Those ships I know for a fact are not necessarily on that gate because I know you guys are probably all strung out between, 1 and 13 kilometers away, or not kilometers, AU away from this particular gate. But the principle should stand. 2.1. Okay, it seems like everyone's got this concept. We don't need to spend a ton more time on it. Anyone struggling with it, or can we move on to the next part?
Can you repeat one more time? You said just click on the gate and then scan. Like, how do you scan towards the gate again?
Yeah, so you need to just change your angle down to 5 degrees. It's at the bottom left of your D-scan window. If you change down to 5 degrees and you make sure that your camera is pointing directly at the gate, you will scan the gate. Right, and anything in line with it. And just to visualize, if you guys are watching the stream, you can see this is what your D-scan is doing. It's scanning anything in this cone.
And you can also hold down V and click on the step.
Yep, that works too. Anyone else got more questions? Okay. Someone mentioned pounces earlier. Pounces are the best method of checking any location that you happen to want to look at without going to it at 0. A pounce is simply a bookmark that is more than 150 kilometers away from an object. So you can have these in shared folders, or you can have them in personal bookmarks. If anyone is connected to our shared folders, you should see a gate perch for EC. Everyone can go ahead and warp to that gate perch EC. If you don't have it, if you're not connected to the shared folders, that's fine. You can just warp to zip in just a moment. This way,
Just warping to 0?
to the gate perch EC bookmark. And yeah, you can warp at 0.
Alright, mine says pounce EC. Is that the same one?
Maybe not.
The pounce is lower.
Oh yeah, they both of these work. They both work.
Normally, though, you would avoid warping to 0 just so that you don't give the position of the pounce to the enemy.
That's fair. Although then they can just get the 100K bookmark instead, but it's all the same. I guess in that vein, though, just keep in mind these are shared bookmarks. The likelihood that other people have used them and died at them, and then enemies have saved that location, is fairly high. So just keep that in mind. It's possible that the bookmark is compromised, in which case you should warp to it at range and not stay there too long.
You break cloak if you're in Black Ops 2.
Yeah, if you warp to a shared bookmark and someone is cloaked there, one of your friends is cloaked there, you can risk decloaking them, which is not very friendly. Okay, so that's shared folders, and then their personal locations. I'm going to warp to one of mine that you guys... Go ahead.
What's the hotkey for pulling up bookmarks?
Control B. Actually, we're going to go over that in just a moment. So those of you that are at the Pounce EC gate, warp to the Gate Perch EC at 100, and those that are at Gate Perch EC, warp to the Pounce EC gate at 100. So there's two groups of you guys at different bookmarks there. Just warp to the opposite bookmark at 100. There you go. The other group can go. There we go. Yes, watch what your friends are doing. Do what they're doing. Ignore the second. I don't care. Pancake and skip. Yep, can warp at range. There you go. Warping at range. Default looks like you warped at 0. Go ahead and warp at 100 back to the Gate Perch EC. You see that? Couple of you still at that bookmark at 0. Nope, not to the gate, to the bookmark. So you guys might need to zoom out. Or there might be a problem here where some people are zoomed in and not actually looking at all the things on the grid around you. Zoom out so you can see everything. If you're looking at the stream, you can see what I mean by zoom way out.
I'm still with Southern Cross Empires, and I don't know if that bookmark is available to me, the perch.
It is, but that's okay. You can just warp to Kai or Beastly or Skip.
So I'm going to Gate Perch EC.
At 100. I want people warping at range. So warp to within 100. You guys are good. You don't have to keep warping around. Just waiting for one more. Just waiting for default to. You can warp to Caillou Kendall or Beastly or Mac Eater. Is that Mac Eater? Oh, Roach Eater, sorry. Words. In order to warp to, yeah, you don't need the bookmarks. You can warp to your fleet members. Just right click one of those fleet members in space and warp to them. Perfect. Excellent. Okay, now you guys can all make personal bookmarks. So hit Control B, name it something like EC Pounce, and save it in a personal bookmark folder, not a shared one. And what you should see if you have your what is it called, sensor overlay on, is an actual little bookmark icon pop up in space next to you. Everyone able to make that happen? Yes, no, maybe so. Everyone got a little personal bookmark now?
Yep.
Yep.
Cool. All right, excellent. So this is something that I'm going to recommend for all the places that you go often, including all over our space. Don't rely on the shared bookmarks. Go make your own. You can warp to the shared bookmarks at range and then move around and drop more bookmarks. The more bookmarks you have, especially in places that you fly around in often, the more options you have on a grid. As you can see, someone who didn't have these bookmarks and all the bookmarks that you guys just dropped right now would not be able to maneuver around this grid the way that you can now that you have added just a couple of bookmarks. So don't be afraid to add lots of bookmarks. Okay, let's talk about, actually, any questions on pounces before we move on? You'll hear pounce, perch, ping, those are all the same thing.
Is there a specific distance you need to be away to avoid a drag bubble?
150 kilometers is minimum warp distance. So if you're 149 kilometers away from something, you cannot warp to it. In order to avoid drags, you want to avoid dropping bookmarks in line with celestials. So up and down are always good options. Sort of away from the center of the system is a good option. 500 plus, though, is the range to just straight up avoid bubbles of any kind. And again, that's only bubbles that happen to be right on the gate. If they put a bubble that's, 200 kilometers in line with the thing you happen to be warping from, you warp to your bookmark that's at 500, you risk getting dragged into that bubble. Because it's only 300 away from the bubble now. Hopefully that made sense.
Gotcha, so 500 plus is safe.
Away from the bubble, yep. So you never know where the bubble is going to be. So 500 plus away from a gate is not a bad idea. That's a pretty far bookmark, though. Most pounces are around the 200 to 300 mark. Any other questions on pounces? Cool. Go forth and save bookmarks for sure. Safes. So we'll talk next about safe spots. I want everyone to hit Control B and do not submit. So just hit Control B, have the little window up here, but do not submit. So just have that window up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to warp us to the star. And once you're in warp and you actually are accelerating into warp, maybe you're, 20 AU away from the star, hit submit. So mid warp. Okay, anyone have a question about what we're about to do? We're going to drop a bookmark in the middle of our warp. Okay, take this warp.
Active.
And you'll note that the bookmark will not actually be saved until you hit the submit button. Where you are when you hit the submit button is where the bookmark will be dropped. I warped you guys, right? Okay, yeah, good.
I'm pretty sure it's on release of the button, actually.
Sure, why not? And then once you land, warp back to that location that you just saved.
Warp drive active.
and you will be at a safe spot. I could not care less about the Dominics right now, by the way, guys. Okay, safe. Go ahead.
Zip, thank you. I've got daddy duties to go and attend to. Thank you very much.
No problem.
All right, take care.
Make sure to check out the recording. Have a good one.
Will do.
Okay, so safe spots are cool because the only way you can be found is if a person happens to be in fleet with you, they can warp to you. Or if they have combat probes. So the way to make sure that you're not getting combat probed is just to pump your D-scan at max range and max angle and watch for combat probes. If you're not in the fleet and there are no combat probes out, if you're at a safe spot, you are effectively safe. There's no way that a person can get to you without combat probes or being in fleet with you. Any questions about safe spots?
Also, make sure combat probes are on your overview.
Yep, definitely a good point. Go ahead and warp to zip, guys. We'll group back up here. So if you're somewhere else, which most of you are right now, go ahead and just warp to zip. Yeah, so it's highly likely that you actually end up dropping bookmarks in the same spot if we all take the same warp like that. The server runs on a 1 second tick, so the likelihood that we both pushed it within the same second is fairly high with 13 people in fleet. Cool. And you can obviously have bookmarks in your personal folder like we have right now, or you could have them in shared folders, and we have some shared safe spots around our space and other locations. Okay, so this has all been about stuff that's in your system with you. You can go look at it in all of these ways that I've described: descanning, capping out, going to safes, pounces, all this stuff. Sometimes, though, you have to go through a gate, and sometimes you have to go through a gate without intel on what's on the other side of that gate. That's generally the most dangerous part of travel, is going through a gate without intel, because you just have no idea what's on the other side of that gate. So in this part, we're going to be talking about how to escape different kinds of situations that you may encounter when you jump through a gate. First thing that I'll note, anyone know how long you have after jumping through a gate before your gate cloak runs out?
1 minute.
1 full minute. And I want to just illustrate that, how long a minute is. 12, 13, 14, 15. So starting now, we're just going to have a whole conversation about gate camps within the space of a minute. And the reason for doing this is because I want people to get used to the fact that a minute's a long time. You have time to think, process the information that's in front of you. There's a timer that you can see ticking down the top left of your screen while this gate cloak is running. There's essentially no need to panic. You have a lot of time to think and decide what you're going to do. And there's 3 things that you can do when jumping into a gate camp. You can crash the gate, you can warp off, or you can burn away. 15. And all of that only took me 45 seconds to say. So just as an illustration, in case anyone was curious, a minute's a long time, especially in EVE. So crashing gate is also called the jump back or a burn back. What you're doing is essentially reapproaching the gate that you just came in from, turning on your micro warp drive or your afterburner, depending on what you have fit, and getting back to the gate as quickly as possible and jumping back through it into the system you just came from. This is really good if there are insta-locky things and your ship won't make it if you just try to warp, or if there are bubbles and you can't escape the bubbles without getting killed. Any questions about jump backs, crashing gate, burn backs, all the same thing?
What happens if they are ready to bounce you off the gate?
That'll happen
just
sometimes. Yeah, sometimes you're just screwed. Actually, that's something I'll just say about all of these things. Sometimes there's nothing that you could have done to change the situation. You jump into a gate camp, and the reality is you're just dead. That will happen. That'll happen to all of you. It's happened to me countless times. Don't feel too bad about it. That's just, you kind of get eaved sometimes. Okay, that's crashing. Let's talk about warping off. Warping off. So if the gang that you jump into, the gate camp that you jump into, is sort of slow locking ships, and they don't have anything that can point you very quickly, you can sometimes just warp off. They won't have time to point you, especially if you're in a fast frigate. This is fine for shuttles, because shuttles insta-warp. This is fine for pods, because pods insta-warp, or any other thing that insta-warps, as long as there are no bubbles in the situation. It's also good if they're preoccupied with another target. This will happen in low sec a lot, especially like on the Tomagate. You'll jump in, you'll see a gate camp, you'll think, oh crap. You should always wait out the entire timer, because it's likely that someone's going to jump in behind you and decloak before you. The gate camp will get preoccupied trying to kill them, and then you can just warp. Happens all the time. And yeah, just wait for them to start shooting the other guy, and then GTFO. So that's warping off. Any questions about just warping away? Okay. The last one is kind of the most aggressive version, if you want to think of it that way. It's also the one that requires you to do the most actually piloting your ship, and it's burning away. So it's useful when they have things that can lock you quickly, but maybe can't move very fast, and you can move fast. So let's imagine you're in a frigate, but the frigate can't insta-warp, and they have like an insta-locking carries or something like that. The carries is going to point you if you try and just warp. It's going to point you actually no matter what you do. What you can do is you can select an object to align to. Align, overheat your micro warp drive or your afterburner, depending on what you have. Micro warp drive is usually actually going to get you out of the situation. An afterburner will seldom get you out of the situation. Align, overheat, turn on your micro warp drive, and just burn away. You'll get pointed, but the ship will hopefully not be fast enough to catch up to you, and will get out of point range before you die, and then you can warp. Again, this all, before you die. Hopefully they're not fast enough. Again, there are no guarantees. Questions about burning away? It's burn away and then warp is kind of the order of operations there.
How do you overheat?
Great question. If you look on the stream right now, I'm going to shift click my micro warp drive. That overheats it. You can see the button kind of turned bright green. You may need to train thermodynamics if you haven't trained it already, otherwise you might not be able to overheat. You can also try and click this tiny little button. That's usually pretty hard to do in the heat of a fight though. You're not going to be able to hit that tiny little green thing at the top of the module. Shift clicking is my favorite way. You can also click on these 3 buttons next to your overview, or not your overview, your health bars, and overload the entire rack. Good question. Other questions? Cool. So that's what happens if you jump into a gate camp. Again, it's very likely that you will die a lot to jumping into gate camps, especially if you go roam solo. There's just no other way around it, but those are some ways to potentially escape those situations if you can. Let's talk about implants next. Obviously, don't fly what you can't afford to lose. Flying with implants is generally a thing that you should do only if you're prepared to lose those implants. Same thing with the ship, right? You don't fly a ship you can't afford to lose. Same thing with implants. Aside from that, though, things that will be bad news for your implants in nullsec. There are bubbles. If you get bubbled in your pod, there's kind of no way you're getting out of that. Go ahead. No, that's okay. Someone just keyed up. No worries. In lowsec, there are smart bombs, and there are actually groups that will catch your ship, and and then they'll get you low in, you know, structure or whatever like that, and they'll stop shooting you. They'll get a smart bombing ship right on top of you. They'll finish killing you, and then they'll light off the smart bombs, killing your pod if you're in range, and they do it well enough. So smart bomb or implants are not quote unquote safe in low sec. You can still be potted if they are smart. The way to save your implants, though, if you do have them, is just to spam warp to a safe location as your ship is dying. Pods insta warp, so as long as there are no bubbles and you don't get smart bombed, as long as you're spamming the warp button to something, as your ship is exploding, your pod will insta warp. Just keep clicking the button. There's really nothing else to it. Questions about implants? Okay, I'm going to warp us back over to the Torino station right now because we're going to talk about NPC stations next, and we're going to talk about some mechanics around them. So I'm warping us to a station at 0. I want everyone to hold still when we land and take note of how far away from the station we land. We're going to do this a couple of times until we get the right thing to happen. Again, I warped us to the station at 0. If you click on the station, you should see a range. So that took us to 0. So stand by. We're going to do that again. Oh my god, we keep getting so lucky. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to illustrate this right now. I don't want to do that a third time. Essentially, warping to a station, an NPC station, does not guarantee that you land within the docking ring like we keep doing here. We're getting lucky. You can land anywhere within, I believe, 2,000 meters and 0. If you land at more than 0, I want to say, your ship actually just starts approaching the station. And the problem with that is during that time where your ship starts approaching the station, you can be shot and killed. In high sec, this can be a problem if there is a danger of being ganked, and in low sec, this is definitely, actually null sec as well, this is a problem because you can land outside of the docking perimeter and be killed before you get to the docking perimeter. Any questions on that little mechanic there?
Docking permission.
Okay, everyone dock up. Dock in the station. The one right in front of us. Dock up, dock up, dock up. And once you're docked, go ahead and undock and stop your ships. And again, to stop your ships, you hit control space. So undock, stop your ships. So dock, undock, and stop your ships. And once you undock, I want everyone to drop a bookmark here, make it a personal bookmark, and call it insta-dock. So again, stop your ships once you undock, drop a bookmark, and call it insta-dock. And what you'll get is a bookmark that's well within the docking perimeter of the station. Okay, Jumbo, you demonstrating it for us?
Yeah, I was just fucking about.
Yep. Yeah, so Jumbo just landed 1,500 meters off. His ship actually has to approach the station before he can dock. That's the danger in that little bit there. So has anyone not dropped an insta-dock bookmark? Okay, take this warp. And when we land, I want everyone to warp back to the insta-dock bookmark that you just created. And this is how you always guarantee that you land within the docking perimeter of the station. And there is no chance that you get killed unless you are just slow on the docking process. By which I mean, like, if you just forget to click the dock button for whatever reason. So go ahead and warp back to your insta-docks.
How do you bring your bookmarks list back up?
L. Just hit L. You can also right-click in space, and go to locations, and you can see your saved locations there as well. I just disconnected.
Whenever you whenever you do use your Instadoc bookmark, that puts you in a position where you can't be targeted or shot?
It puts you in a position where you can immediately dock in the station. If you don't immediately dock, you're still out in space. You can still be shot at or whatever, but it removes the danger of you warping to a station, thinking that you're going to land within the docking perimeter, and then your ship starts to slow boat to the station. Someone happens to be there, and they can kill you before you make it to the docking perimeter.
Okay, so once you initiate the docking sequence, then at that point you're safe?
There you go. A good way to do this, like in JITA, for example. JITA is a great example of where this happens all the time. People will sit in tornadoes on the JITA station. They'll wait for people to warp to the station and hit the dock button. When they land outside of docking range, they'll just get alphaed by the tornado. If you warp to an insta-dock and turn on your autopilot as you enter warp to the insta-dock, then everything is handled perfectly for you. Your ship lands at the insta-dock, you're in docking range because you warped to your bookmark, and the docking process automatically starts because your autopilot is running. Just a little tip there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Default, can you right-click Zip Slings in Fleet and select the Make Boss option, please? Thank you. Okay, I'm back. Cool, so that's Insta-Docks, and let's go ahead and dock, and we'll do Insta-Undocks. Insta-Undocks follow a similar concept. When you undock from a station, if you have to turn and your ship has to, align to a new location in order to warp, so everyone dock, that's a period of time in which you are vulnerable. Again, this is super important in trade hubs, but it can also be important in low-sec and some null-sec areas as well. So dock up, dock up, dock up, dock up. Okay, and if you can, be watching my stream for this part, because it's going to kind of happen there. Go ahead and undock and then do nothing. So again, undock and then do nothing. Just undock and sit on your hands. Hey, Lucky. Pew pew indeed. You'll notice that as we undock, we're moving, right? We're moving along a vector. And what you want to do with Insta-Undock bookmarks is set them along that vector, or at least close to it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to warp us to an Insta-Undock right now, and you'll see all of our ships basically immediately enter warp.
Warp drive active.
Maybe just point out also that when you undock from a station, you have a 30-second timer, same as the one when you jump a gate, so you have time to think as well.
Yep, that's a good point. We'll actually, you just covered it. That's a great thing to mention. Thank you. Yeah, you have an invulnerability timer when you undock from a structure that you break if you give your ship a command aside from stop. So that's an Insta-Undock. This happens to be a bookmark that I have saved here. Actually, I think it's a shared one. Yeah, it's a shared bookmark that we have saved here. There are quite often, though, natural Insta-Undocks on stations. What I mean by that is if you look kind of in the direction away from the station we just came out of, there's a couple of moons over in that direction. Those moons would work as Insta-Undocks if you didn't have a bookmark. Does everyone understand that? Make sense? They're along the vector of the undock from the station.
Would the moon right next to us have worked?
I don't know that you can. You know what? It might actually. Let's try it. So I'm warping us back. Go ahead and dock in the station and try and use planet 5 Moon 15 as an Insta-Undock. So I'll give it a shot. Somehow I doubt it, but we'll find out. Because at 0 on that moon is going to be anywhere kind of around the entire thing, so it might be kind of way down and to the right, for example, and that would not work as an Insta-Undock.
Docking pin.
It's a weird thing, but warping to like a planet at 0 doesn't actually take you to the planet, right? You don't warp to the core of the planet. You warp to a location next to the planet that is defined as, you know, that particular spot. It's basically set by CCP. It's kind of weird, but you'll get used to it.
So if you warp to a planet from any direction, you still end up at the same spot?
Exactly. Yeah, kind of weird, right?
Warp drive active.
Yeah, so this moon at 0 is actually way off to the right here. When you guys warp, you'll see where it happens. This moon is not a good insta undock for this station. Y'all see where I ended up? I broadcast it as a warp to, in case you guys can't figure out how to click on that. If any of you don't have moon brackets on, by the way, let's get those turned on. Go to shortcuts, so hit escape, go to shortcuts, and then in the filter at the top right, search for bracket. And what you want to find is the shortcut for toggle special bracket display. I think by default it's Alt-Shift-X. Then hit escape and hit Alt-Shift-X. And that'll turn on and off moon brackets. You definitely want to have those on. It's really dumb that CCP has those off by default. They should absolutely be on by default. Okay, any questions about NPC station insta-undocs, insta-docs, mechanics in general for NPC stations? Yep, Alt-Shift-X. If you can see the little icon at the center of this moon, you have done it right. You don't need it on your overview, you need it in space, right? That's the bracket.
Did not know that one's Inky Zip.
Yeah. Definitely something to have for every person who plays Eve. Again, super dumb oversight by CCP.
Mine will only let me edit it.
What do you mean?
Whenever I go in there and I click on it, I can either clear
Oh yeah,
the key
you don't.
combination or edit it.
Yeah, you don't need to clear it or anything. You just need to see what it is, right? It's Alt-Shift-X. So then you just hit escape, leave your menu behind. Once you're back in the game, out of the escape menu, just hit Alt-Shift-X, and that should turn on the bracket that you're looking for. Again, if you're looking at this moon here, and there's a little icon at the center of it, you hover over it, it says Torinos 5, Moon 15, you've done it correctly.
Okay, I see it now.
Excellent. Anyone not able to get that? Okay, we're going to do a little bit of traveling over to 9.3 right now to talk about Citadel tether mechanics, and then we are going to call this class done. Is anyone not ready to do some nullsec traveling right now? Anyone in? We should all tether as we land. I guess that's the first thing we can mention here is when you warp to a Citadel where you have docking rights, when you land in range, you automatically tether. Tethering makes you invulnerable to bomb damage, the PDS, bushes, damage, locks. You can't even be locked. When you're tethered, you are safe from everything except for getting bumped. You can be bumped if you are tethered, but that's it.
And yourself.
Yes, you can screw yourself over. Yes, that is possible. That's why we're here, though, to help you understand what to not do in the pursuit of not screwing yourself over. So, first thing you should not do if you want to remain tethered is aggress somebody. So, Jumbo, you're burning off somewhere, not sure where. Everyone go ahead and lock zip. Go ahead and lock my rupture. My rupture should be untethered now. You'll notice that my rupture untethered when I locked the Fortizar. When you lock a target, your tether will break. So as everyone locks me, you should see your tethers break. And the tether, you can actually see there's an icon in the bottom just above your health. If you are tethered, if you're not, it'll disappear. So Pancake, go ahead and lock zip.
I'm trying to figure out how to do that.
That's okay. In your fleet channel, I put an X, right click my name, Zip Slings, go to fleet, and go to add to watch list. You see that?
Okay.
And then from your watch list, you can lock me. Just control click my name on your watch list. Should have popped up somewhere.
Okay.
Cool, excellent. So no one's tethered right now. And some of you have already started doing the next thing, which is to aggress me. So don't turn on your guns, just turn on a scram or a newt or some sort of E-war. Please don't actually shoot me. Okay, Kit, I know you know this. Looks good. Doc, make sure you lock, zip, and aggress me. There you go. Okay, cool. So now I want everyone to note, if you're watching the stream, you'll notice that I am not aggressed in any way, but I'm scrammed, right? I'm scrammed here on this grid, or I'm pointed, right? If you get, some of you have me pointed as well. I cannot dock. I cannot dock while pointed or scrammed. Yeah, go ahead and keep it auto running. Just keep it on. So this is the first thing to know. If you're aggressed, or not aggressed rather, if you are not tethered and someone points you, you are in trouble because you cannot dock, you cannot tether until they stop pointing you, or you get away from them somehow. So I'm dead in the water right now. I can't dock, can't tether, there's nothing I can do. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Next thing I want you guys to do is actually de-aggress. So everyone turn off your modules, turn off all your modules, and you notice that while you maintain an aggression timer, a weapons timer in the top left of your screen, your ship will not tether. So you guys have all de-aggressed, and unlock me as well. Unlock me, unlock me, unlock me, unlock me. Remove me from your locks. You'll notice that your ships will not re-tether until that weapons timer completes. So unlock me, make sure you unlock me. And that should be a 60-second timer from when you stopped aggressing. So this is another thing. If you aggress someone and you warp to a citadel, you will not tether until that aggression timer, that weapons timer, is done.
Does locking give you an aggression timer?
No, it does not.
So if we had not aggressed and we just took you off lock, we would tether immediately.
No, if you have something, so you'll notice right now I have the Fortizar locked. My ship will not be tethered as long as I have the Fortizar locked.
But if we had not aggressed you and dropped lock, we would have tethered immediately?
Yes, correct. So you guys are starting to tether up again because the timer is ending, and you'll notice again I didn't have a weapons timer during any of that. If I unlock the fort, like you're saying, I will immediately tether.
Cool.
And there it is. So that covers docking, tethering. If you're pointed or scrammed, you cannot dock or tether. If you're aggressed, you cannot dock or tether. You can point or scram somebody who is not tethered, and you will prevent them from docking or tethering. And then that will bring us to our last part here, which is aggression mechanics. If you are aggressed, if you have that weapons timer, also called an aggression timer, it's a 60-second timer that continuously updates as long as you are doing an aggressive action. Again, locking somebody is not an aggressive action, but it will de-tether you. While you are aggressed, while you have a weapons timer, you cannot dock, tether, jump, or refit in any way. Questions on that?
What's the difference in the colors of tether?
Great question. Is mine yellow? Yes, it is. Cool. So I'm actually near the edge of my tether range. And if you guys actually start approaching the GM gate, so if everyone go in and align to the GM gate and turn your prop mods on, you'll notice your tether change from blue to yellowish orange, and then it will break when it gets to the edge. So orange indicates that you're near the edge of tether, and then as you get further away, it will break completely and the tether icon will go away. Everyone see that? And then all you need to do to reestablish the tether is just reapproach the structure. So mine just disappeared, reapproach, and reestablish tether. Any questions? Fantastic. That covers Survival 101. Thanks for coming, guys. That was a lot of fun.
We just one more thing.
Yeah, please.
New players might not be there yet, but whenever you end up having a ship that has boost or links, this generates an aggression timer on your ship. So this can prevent you. So you might, have a mining ship with boost, forget to turn it off, warp to the fort or an asteroid or any structures, you won't tether. So you can be dead in the water there as well.
Yep, just always be aware of things that give you a weapons timer. Running a smart bomb gives you a weapons timer. Running links or boosts gives you a weapons timer. I believe running a micro jump field generator gives you a weapons timer. I could be wrong.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Yeah, so there are some things that you might not think would give you a weapons timer that actually do. Specifically, running links and an MJD field
Ripping someone
generator.
that has weapon timers.
Yeah, actually,
whatever time remains, I believe.
yes. So if you give remote assistance to anybody, you inherit all of their timers. If they're suspect, you become a suspect for as long as they had a suspect timer remaining. If they're a criminal, you become a criminal for as long as they had a criminal timer remaining. If they are aggressed, they have a weapons timer, you inherit that weapons timer. And that's for any remote assistance, reps, remote, ECCM, anything like that.